Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And the title of today's episode comes from Laos. Not really, but it comes from a series of conversations and experiences my daughter Clara and I had when we were in Laos. And we spent some time one summer working with the family of a client of mine in an orphanage, in actually 3 orphanages in Laos. And as you might expect, if you've had any experience of being in a culture that is very different from your own, in a country that's very different from your own, things don't work the way you expect them to. And there were times where in Laos things didn't seem to work at all. And whenever my daughter or I would get frustrated, we learned quite quickly to just remind ourselves, patience and humor. Patience and humor, patience and humor. And it was true. Patience and humor were what got us through. To the point where we actually talked about, we didn't. She was young and I was probably scared of tattoos, but we talked about getting matching tattoos using the Lao characters for patience and humor. But what I didn't think about at the time that seems relevant to me now was, where do patience and humor come from? And the reason that that's important, or so it seems to me, is because I've noticed over the years that when you try to behaviorally make yourself feel something or apply something, sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But when it's a natural side effect of your understanding, then you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do patience and humor. You just notice yourself experiencing what other people think of as a lot of patience and a good sense of humor about things. And so for me, taking that idea that the traits that we think of as things to practice are actually part of our natural well-being, our natural resilience, then patience comes from understanding that we are not in control of the timing of life. Now, maybe you think differently. Maybe you feel you are in control. And again, I say this sometimes in these, but if you control time, if I can't meet you, I want to watch the Marvel movie. But most of us realize when we stop and think about it that we're not in control of time. We can make up beautiful sayings about it like, well, everything happens in God's time. And sure, that's a way of talking about it. We can say, I'm out of cliches, but I'm sure somebody's going to write in and tell me some good time cliches. But when you really see that the timing of something isn't up to you, patience is just a description of how you naturally deal with things. My favorite example about this, which I probably shared too many times, so if you're a regular listener, you can fast forward through this bit. But I was working with my mentor, George Pransky, and he was doing a coaching demonstration with one of my students, and they had writer's block. And George didn't seem to understand what writer's block was, and the student was trying to explain that he found it difficult to write, and I almost interrupted the whole session, which would have been very bad form, to explain to George about writer's block. But George just didn't seem to understand, and finally this client said, "George, I haven't written a word in 7 years." And we all laughed, but George just said, "Well, what makes you think that that's about anything other than being really bad at predicting how long something's supposed to take?" And the room went dead quiet, because we all got, oh yeah, we have no idea how long something's gonna take. We make up time frames and decide too long, not long enough, instead of letting life tell us how long something's gonna take. And so when you see the nature of time, you see patience is just a description of how you naturally are with time. Now, humor, similarly, is not about jokes. It's about lightness. So when people talk about seriousness, what they're usually talking about is heaviness. So I was working with a client once, and probably one of the most serious people, heavy people I'd ever been around. And he said to me, "Do you think I need to be more serious?" And I burst out laughing, turned out inappropriately because I thought he was joking. But in his mind, that kind of heaviness of manner, that sort of frowny face, scrunchy faced way of approaching life was proof of care. It was proof of being an adult. And culturally, we've all got that to a certain extent. We've picked up on the idea that lightness and frivolity are the same. The enlightened Scottish mystic Sid Banks was once in a lecture talking about how other spiritual groups didn't like the people who were listening to Sid because they laughed so much. And they said, you should be more serious. And he said, what they don't understand is I am serious, but without the feeling. And that really landed with me, because I got that taking things seriously, as in giving them your full attention, is very different from making them heavy. And that in fact, everybody performs at their best when they have that balance of full attention and lightness of touch. So another way of talking about patience and humor is just to see we're not in the control of life's timing, and adding heaviness does not add anything to performance and results. Have fun, learn heaps. This one I'm not even going to say happy exploring. I'm going to say reflect on it for a bit and see what you see. And I'll talk with you soon.